The Galactic Council went too reckless. Now humanity strikes back. The blockade of Nexus Prime began quietly. Human ships arrived not with guns blazing, but with careful precision, positioning themselves at every jump point leading to and from the Council's capital world. No shots were fired. No ultimatums were issued. The ships simply appeared and waited. Admiral Chen watched from the Indomitable as her fleet settled into position. Nexus Prime was visible below, a gleaming world covered in towering cities that housed billions of beings from dozens of species. It was the heart of galactic civilization, home to the Council that had ruled for 3,000 years. Now it was cut off from the rest of the galaxy. All civilian traffic is to be allowed through, Chen ordered. We are not here to hurt innocent people, but no military vessels, no supply ships for Council forces, nothing that supports their war effort. This blockade stays until they agree to our terms. The effect was immediate. Nexus Prime had never been blockaded in its entire history. The world was wealthy, beautiful, and completely dependent on imports for food, water, and resources. Within days, shortages began. Within a week, panic started to spread. Inside the Council chamber, chaos reigned. Species blamed each other for the disaster. Some demanded immediate attack to break the blockade. Others called for negotiations. 12 species had already withdrawn from the Council entirely, refusing to support the war any longer. Archon Velthara stood in the center of the storm, trying to maintain control. But his power was crumbling. The fleet he had sent against humanity was destroyed. The colonies he had occupied were liberated, and now the Council's own capital was under siege. We must attack, he insisted. Gather every ship from every loyal world and break this blockade. A Thalaxian counselor stood up, her voice sharp. With what ships, Archon? You sent our best fleets against humanity, and they were destroyed. Our member species are abandoning us. We have no more cards to play. Then we fight with what we have, Velthara said desperately. For what? Asked another counselor, a Vorlax whose species had lost hundreds of ships in the failed offensive. For your pride. The humans have offered reasonable terms. They want sovereignty, reparations, and guarantees of safety. They are not trying to conquer us. They just want us to leave them alone. If we negotiate, we show weakness, Velthara argued. We have already shown weakness, the Vorlax replied. We showed it when we failed to destroy them despite overwhelming numbers. Every day this war continues, we look weaker. The only question is whether we accept defeat with dignity or wait until we have lost everything. The debate raged for hours. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity prepared for what might be necessary if negotiations failed. President Martinez met with Admiral Chen via secure communication. How long can we maintain the blockade? Martinez asked. Months if needed, Chen replied. We have supply lines established. Our crews are well rested and morale is high. The question is how long Nexus Prime can hold out. They are already rationing food. I do not want to starve civilians, Martinez said firmly. That makes us no better than them. Agreed. But we need to maintain pressure. The Council will not negotiate from a position of strength. They need to understand they have lost. Dr. Reeves, now serving as Chief Intelligence Officer, joined the conversation. Our sources inside the Council say Velthara's support is collapsing. Multiple counselors are ready to vote for his removal. If we can hold for another week, the Council might change leadership on its own. And if they do not? Martinez asked. Chen's face was grim. Then we may need to consider a direct assault on Council military facilities. Not civilian targets, but their remaining warships, their command centers. We end their ability to wage war completely. Before Martinez could respond, an alert came through. Madam President, we have incoming. The tactical display showed a large fleet emerging from jump points near Earth. For a moment, everyone tensed, thinking the Council had launched a desperate counterattack. Then the identification codes came through. These were Council ships, but they were not attacking. They were surrendering. The fleet commander, a Korvax admiral named Threx, broadcast a message. People of Earth, we come in peace. We no longer serve the Council. Counselor Shrix was my friend and mentor. When he spoke the truth and was killed for it, I knew the Council had lost its way. Many of us feel the same. We will not fight against people who only want freedom. It was a watershed moment. Not just ships defecting, but entire species within the Council rejecting the war. Over the next 3 days, similar defections happened across Council space. Entire fleets refused orders. Planetary governors declared neutrality. The Council's unity, already fractured, collapsed entirely. On Nexus Prime, the inevitable finally happened. A coalition of councilors called for an emergency vote. Archon Velthera was removed from power, his policies repudiated. A new council was formed, one that included representatives from species that had been marginalized before. The new council, led by a coalition including Admiral Threx and other reformers, contacted Earth immediately. Ambassador Okafor, finally released from detention, represented humanity in the negotiations. He arrived at Nexus Prime on a human ship, walking into the council chamber not as a supplicant but as an equal. The negotiations took 2 weeks. Both sides had demands, grievances, and red lines. But unlike before, there was genuine respect and a shared desire to end the bloodshed. The final agreement included everything humanity had demanded: full sovereignty, recognition of human territory, massive reparations for damages and lives lost, and a complete restructuring of council governance to prevent any single species from dominating others. But the agreement also included something unexpected. Humanity agreed to share some of their innovations with council species, their cyber warfare techniques, their adaptive tactics, their fusion drive technology, not as tribute or payment but as partners in a new galactic order. "We do not want to rule the galaxy," Okafor said in his closing remarks. "We just want to be part of it as equals. We want our children to grow up in a universe where might does not make right, where young species are not crushed for daring to be different, where ancient empires cannot bully those who challenge their supremacy." He looked around the chamber at representatives from dozens of species. The old council fell because it forgot this truth. Power without justice is tyranny. And tyranny, no matter how long it has stood, will always eventually fall. The treaty was signed. The blockade was lifted. Council ships withdrew from all human space. The war was over, but the work of building peace had only begun. Admiral Chen stood on New Hebrides at the memorial that had been erected in the central square. 3 names were carved in stone, the teachers who had been executed for the crime of educating children. Around those names were thousands of others, soldiers, civilians, humans, and aliens alike who had died in the war. Commander Torres joined her, looking older than her years. The resistance leader had been offered a position in Earth's government, but she had declined. She would stay here, rebuild her home, make sure no one forgot what had happened. Was it worth it? Torres asked quietly. Chen thought about the question for a long time. She thought about the ships lost, the people dead, the trauma that would last for generations. She thought about the alternative: submission, slavery, the slow death of human freedom and culture. "Yes," she finally said, "not because I wanted war, not because I enjoyed it, but because some things are worth fighting for. Freedom is one of them." Torres nodded. "I hope we never have to fight like this again." "So do I," Chen agreed. "But if we do, at least now the galaxy knows. Humanity does not kneel." 5 years later, the galaxy had changed dramatically. The old Galactic Council was gone, replaced by the Galactic Union, a more democratic institution where all species had equal voice. Humans served alongside former enemies on joint peacekeeping missions. Trade flourished. Cultural exchange programs brought young beings from across space to learn from each other. Dr. Reeves ran the Xenological Institute, dedicated to understanding and appreciating the diversity of galactic life. Ambassador Okafor served as the Union's first Secretary General, respected by all species for his wisdom and fairness. Admiral Chen, finally retired, taught strategy at the military academy on Luna, training the next generation of defenders. On New Hebrides, Torres watched human and alien children play together in the square where the memorial stood. They would grow up knowing the story of what happened here, but they would also grow up as friends, not enemies. A young Korvax child approached Torres, looking up at the memorial. "Did the war have to happen?" the child asked. Torres knelt down to the child's level. "No, it did not have to happen. It happened because some beings forgot that might does not make right. Our job now is to make sure no one ever forgets that lesson again." The child nodded solemnly and ran off to play. Torres stood and looked up at the sky, where ships of a dozen species flew in formation, protecting the peace they had all fought to achieve. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Power demanded responsibility. Authority required humility. And any civilization that forgot these truths would eventually face the consequences. Humanity had struck back when pushed too far, but what they built in the aftermath was even more important. The Galactic Council went too reckless. Now humanity strikes back. The Battle of the Frontier began with silence. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Indomitable, watching her tactical display. Before her, in the empty space between human and Council territory, a massive Council armada was assembling. 300 ships, the largest force ever gathered against a single species. They came from dozens of Council worlds, a show of overwhelming force meant to crush the human rebellion once and for all. The Council admirals had been confident. They knew exactly where the human fleet was hiding. Their intelligence networks had finally tracked down the scattered human ships and calculated their positions. They had planned the perfect ambush. What they did not know was that human intelligence had known about their plan for 2 weeks. Dr. Reeves, now safely back with Earth forces, had provided the Council's battle plans before escaping Nexus Prime. The Ghost Network had infiltrated Council military communications. Every order, every ship movement, every tactical decision had been observed and analyzed. The Council thought they were hunting humans. Actually, humans had been herding them into a trap. Enemy fleet is in position, reported Chen's tactical officer. They are preparing to advance on our supposed location. Chen looked at the hologram showing Council ships spread across a vast area, organized in their traditional formation. They fought like they had fought for thousands of years. Overwhelming force in rigid formations. Depending on superior numbers and firepower, humans fought differently. All ships, execute Protocol Chaos, Chen ordered. Across the battlefield, human ships that the Council thought were scattered and running suddenly converged from multiple directions. They came from above and below the Council formation, from angles the Council sensors had not been watching carefully. They came fast, their engines burning at maximum power, closing the distance before the Council could properly respond. Captain Wu brought Phantom's Edge screaming in at the flank of a Council battlecruiser. His railguns fired at point-blank range, punching through shields that had been designed to stop attacks from a distance. The battlecruiser staggered, its hull breached, atmosphere venting into space. Other human ships followed similar tactics. They fought close, closer than Council doctrine considered safe, using their superior maneuvering to stay inside the enemy's weapon arcs. They targeted specific systems, engines, weapons, shield generators, not trying to destroy every ship, but to cripple as many as possible. The Council fleet tried to respond, but their rigid formations worked against them. Ships collided, trying to turn and face threats from unexpected angles. Their heavy weapons could not track fast-moving targets at close range. Their commanders, trained in traditional tactics, struggled to adapt to the chaotic, swirling battle that humans had created. Then the humans deployed their new weapon, Prometheus rounds. These were simple in concept, but devastating in execution. Fusion-powered kinetic projectiles that accelerated to a fraction of light speed. They had no explosives, no complex warheads. They did not need them. At the speed they traveled, they carried more energy than any bomb. When they hit, they went through ships like bullets through paper. A Council dreadnought, pride of the Zentari fleet, took 3 Prometheus rounds in rapid succession. The first penetrated the bow. The second punched through the middle. The third shattered the engine section. The ship broke apart, its pieces tumbling slowly through the void. General Vok watched from his command ship as his fleet began to disintegrate. He could not understand what was happening. The humans were supposed to be defeated, scattered, running. Instead, they fought with a ferocity and creativity that his tactical training had never prepared him for. All ships, reform defensive sphere, he ordered. Concentrate fire on individual targets. But reforming required coordination and time, and the humans gave him neither. They darted between Council ships, using the larger vessels as shields against their allies' fire. They launched cyber attacks that disabled targeting systems. They broadcast false signals that confused sensors. Dr. Reeves, monitoring the battle from a command ship safely behind the lines, provided real-time intelligence updates. She had studied Council species for years and knew their strengths and weaknesses. She knew that Zentari ships had a vulnerable shield generator configuration. She knew that Thalaxian vessels relied too heavily on automated systems that could be hacked. She knew that Vorlak's cruisers had blind spots in their sensor coverage. She fed all this information to human tactical computers, and the fleet used it ruthlessly. The turning point came when a human strike team, led by a young officer named Sarah Kim, boarded Vok's flagship. They had approached in a damaged shuttle that appeared to be drifting debris. By the time the Council crew realized it was a threat, Marines were already cutting through the hull. The fight through the ship was brutal. Council soldiers had the numbers, but human Marines fought with a desperation and fury that overwhelmed them. They knew what Vok had done on New Hebrides. They had seen the footage of the executions. This was personal. Kim's team fought their way to the bridge. Vok himself stood waiting, his massive armored form wielding a plasma blade that could cut through steel. He was a legendary warrior, and he would not be taken easily. The fight lasted less than a minute. Vok was skilled, trained in combat for centuries. But Kim was young, fast, and angry. When he swung his blade, she rolled under it. When he fired his weapon, she was already moving. She got inside his guard and placed a shaped charge against his armor's power core. "For New Hebrides," she said simply, and detonated it. The explosion killed Vok instantly. It also critically damaged the flagship's command systems. Without their leader and with their flagship crippled, the Council fleet's coordination collapsed completely. Chen saw the moment the enemy broke. Ships began jumping away, abandoning the battle. Some commanders tried to rally their forces, but panic was contagious. Within an hour, what had been the largest fleet ever assembled against humanity was a scattered collection of damaged ships fleeing in all directions. The humans did not pursue. They had won a great victory, but they had also taken losses. 23 ships destroyed. Hundreds of crew members dead. Chen looked at the casualty reports and felt the weight of command. These were people she had known, soldiers she had trained, friends she had shared meals with. Victory came with a price, and she had paid it, but the strategic situation had changed completely. The Council's aura of invincibility was shattered. Human forces now controlled the frontier, the border region between Council and human space. More importantly, they had shown that the Council could be beaten. On New Hebrides, Commander Torres heard news of the battle and wept with relief. Help was coming. Earth had not forgotten them. Her resistance fighters, now numbering in the thousands, prepared for a final push against the demoralized Council occupation forces. When human ships appeared in orbit 3 days later, the Council soldiers surrendered without a fight. They had heard what happened to Vok's fleet. They had no desire to die on a hostile world for a war they were losing. Torres stood in the same square where the executions had taken place. Now it was filled with cheering colonists, welcoming their liberators. She thought about the 3 teachers who had died here, and she promised their memory that their sacrifice would never be forgotten. Across human space, other occupied colonies were being liberated. The Council forces, cut off and unsupplied, could not hold their positions. Some surrendered, some fought and were destroyed. Some abandoned their posts and tried to flee home. The war was far from over, but the momentum had shifted completely. The hunters had become the hunted. On Nexus Prime, Archon Velthara watched reports of the disasters with growing horror. His grand plan to subjugate humanity had not just failed. It had backfired catastrophically. Multiple species were withdrawing from the Council. Public protest demanded an end to the war. His own position was increasingly precarious. He called for a full mobilization, demanding that every Council world contribute more ships and soldiers. Some refused outright. Others sent token forces but clearly had no heart for continued fighting. The Galactic Council, that ancient institution that had ruled known space for millennia, was fracturing. And it was all because they had underestimated one young species that refused to kneel. Ambassador Okafor made another broadcast, this time offering terms. The Council can end this war today. Withdraw all forces from human space. Recognize our sovereignty and our right to self-defense. Pay reparations for the damages and lives lost. Do this, and we will have peace. Or, he continued, his voice cold, you can continue fighting, and we will bring this war to every Council world that supports it. We will blockade your trade routes. We will destroy your fleets. We will make you understand that freedom is not negotiable. The choice was clear, but pride dies hard, especially in ancient empires that have never known defeat. Velthara rejected the terms and vowed to fight on. Admiral Chen received his response and nodded grimly. Then we take the fight to them. Prepare for Phase 3, Operation Reckoning. We are going to blockade Nexus Prime itself. Her officers stared at her in shock. Attacking the Council's capital world was almost unthinkable. But Chen's face showed only determination. The Galactic Council went too reckless. Now humanity strikes back. The execution happened at dawn. Commander Lisa Torres watched through binoculars from a hillside 2 kilometers away, unable to stop what was about to happen, unable to even look away. 3 colonists knelt in the central square of New Hebrides settlement. Their crime: teaching their children about Earth's military history. Council soldiers had found textbooks about famous battles, stories of courage and resistance. General Vok had declared this seditious material designed to inspire rebellion. He was not wrong, but that did not make what happened next any less horrific. Vok stood before the kneeling prisoners, reading charges in his cold, mechanical voice. The entire colony had been forced to watch, thousands of people held at gunpoint in their own town square. Torres could see her neighbors, her friends, standing helpless as the Zentarier general pronounced his sentence. The council brings order to chaos, Vok declared. Resistance is futile. Compliance is mandatory. Let this be an example. The shots echoed across the valley. 3 bodies fell. Torres heard screams even from this distance. She lowered her binoculars, tears streaming down her face, and made a promise to herself and to those murdered colonists. This would not stand. She activated her communicator, using a frequency the council could not detect. All resistance cells, this is Torres. Operation Thorn begins now. Make them bleed. Across New Hebrides, former soldiers and angry civilians struck simultaneously. Mining explosives destroyed the council's fuel depot. A construction mech, reprogrammed by a clever engineer, crushed 2 patrol vehicles. The main communications relay exploded in a fireball that lit up the night sky. Resistance fighters appeared from hiding places, striking at council soldiers with improvised weapons before vanishing into the wilderness. General Vok's iron grip on the colony was shattered in one night of coordinated chaos. The images spread across human space faster than council sensors could block them. The executions. The resistance. The message was clear. Humans would not submit quietly. The council had made a terrible mistake. On Earth, Admiral Chen watched the footage in her command center. She felt sick, angry, and grimly determined all at once. The executions had come 3 days before her planned offensive. The council had accelerated the timeline by their own brutality. Move up the operation, she ordered. All ships execute Phase 1 immediately. Across human space, hidden ships came to life. Engines that had been cold for weeks ignited. Weapons systems powered up. Crews woke from suspended animation, ready for war. The trap was about to be sprung. Captain Wu's ship, Phantom's Edge, was among the first to strike. His target was a council logistics depot in the Kepler system, a massive station that supplied dozens of occupation forces. Council sensors had never detected his destroyer hiding in the asteroid field. They had no idea what was coming. Wu brought his ship in fast and silent, using the asteroids for cover until the last possible moment. When he finally appeared on their sensors, he was already in weapons range. All batteries fire, he said calmly. Missiles and railgun slugs tore into the station. The council defenders scrambled to respond, but they were supply personnel, not combat troops. Their few defensive weapons fired wildly, hitting nothing. Within minutes, the station was a burning wreck. Its stores of fuel, ammunition, and supplies scattered in expanding clouds of debris. Wu jumped his ship away before reinforcements could arrive, leaving only destruction behind. The same scene played out at 17 other locations. Human ships appeared from nowhere, struck their targets with devastating precision, and vanished before council forces could respond. Supply lines were severed. Communications relays went dark. Fuel depots exploded. In a single coordinated hour, the council's occupation became exponentially more difficult. On Nexus Prime, the Ghost Network struck their own blow. Human hackers working from hidden locations across the galaxy infiltrated council computer systems and released classified documents to every news network they could find. The documents showed the council's true plans: complete subjugation of humanity, forced reduction of population, cultural elimination. The reaction was immediate. Not all council species were comfortable with such brutal tactics. Several smaller species began questioning whether they wanted to be part of such actions. Public protests erupted on multiple worlds. The council's moral authority, already questionable, took a devastating hit. Counselor Shrix, the Korvax who had helped Dr. Reeves escape, stood before the council chamber and spoke against the hardline policies. It was political suicide, and he knew it. "We claim to bring civilization to the galaxy," he said, his reptilian voice carrying through the chamber. "But what civilization murders teachers for educating children? What civilization plans the elimination of an entire species' culture? If this is what the council has become, then perhaps the council should not exist." Archon Velthara's response was swift and merciless. "You speak treason, Shrix. Guards, remove him." The Korvax counselor was dragged away. He would be executed within the day for his words. But those words had been heard by billions across the galaxy. He had become a martyr, proof that not everyone in the council supported the war against humanity. On New Hebrides, the resistance was growing bolder. Torres led raids against council patrols, using her knowledge of the terrain to ambush and disappear. The colonists, enraged by the executions, provided supplies, information, and new recruits. What had been a handful of fighters became hundreds. General Vok responded with increased brutality. He instituted a curfew. Anyone caught outside after dark was shot on sight. Food was rationed to starvation levels. Houses were burned in retaliation for resistance attacks. The occupation became a nightmare, but it also became unsustainable. Vok's soldiers were trapped on a hostile world, cut off from resupply thanks to the destruction of their logistics network. They were under constant attack by an enemy they could not find. Morale collapsed. Some soldiers began to desert. Ambassador Okafor, still on Earth, made a broadcast that was transmitted across every communication channel humanity could access. The Ghost Network made sure it reached Council worlds too, translated into dozens of languages. "To the Galactic Council," he began, standing tall in his formal robes. "You demanded our surrender. You threatened our families. You murdered our civilians. You believed we would kneel before your power. You were wrong." His voice hardened. "Humanity does not kneel. We do not submit to tyrants, no matter how ancient their empires or how numerous their fleets. You wanted to make us slaves. Instead, you have awakened something you cannot control." Images played behind him. The hidden fleet emerging from darkness, the burning council stations, the resistance fighters on New Hebrides, and finally, the 3 murdered colonists whose deaths had sparked this firestorm. "We did not start this war," Okafor continued, "but we will finish it. Every species watching this broadcast should ask themselves, if the Council can do this to us, what will they do to you when you become inconvenient? We fight not just for ourselves, but for any species that values freedom over servitude." He leaned forward, his eyes blazing with controlled fury. "To those on the Council who oppose this madness, like Counselor Shrix, who spoke truth at the cost of his life, we remember you. We honor you. You show that not all Council species support tyranny. And to Archon Velthara and his followers, come for us if you dare. We are ready. And we will show you that might does not make right. It just makes you a bigger target." The broadcast ended. Its effect was immediate and profound. 12 minor species on the Council quietly began withdrawing their ships from the occupation forces. They did not want to be part of what was increasingly looking like a war crime. Public opinion across Council space fractured, with many citizens questioning whether humanity was really the threat they had been told to fear. On Earth, Admiral Chen smiled grimly as she watched tactical displays showing Council fleet movements. They were scrambling, trying to understand how a supposedly defeated enemy had struck them so effectively. They were pulling forces from other areas to reinforce their weakened positions. They were reacting instead of acting. That meant humanity had seized the initiative. "Phase 2, she ordered. Time to turn defense into offense.
"Get me the location of General Vok's command ship."
"I want that monster to pay for what he did on New Hebrides." Her officers scrambled to comply. The war was just beginning, and already the Galactic Council was learning a painful lesson. You could conquer a human world. You could kill human soldiers. You could even execute human civilians. But you could never ever make humanity give up. They would fight from the shadows. They would fight from the ruins. They would fight until victory or extinction, and they would take a heavy toll either way. The Council had poked a sleeping bear. Now that bear was awake, angry, and coming for them with claws bared. The Galactic Council went too reckless. Now Humanity Strikes Back Captain James Wu floated in complete darkness. His ship, the Phantom's Edge, hung silent in the middle of an asteroid field 3 light-years from the nearest inhabited system. The engines were cold. Life support ran on minimal power. His crew of 40 slept in suspended animation, their bodies frozen in time until they were needed. Wu stayed awake, watching, waiting. His sensors, operating on passive mode only, showed a council patrol passing by twice each week. They never suspected that a human destroyer was hiding among the rocks, close enough to count their hull plates. Wu recorded everything: ship types, patrol patterns, communication frequencies, weapon signatures. All of it went into encrypted data packets that would be transmitted to Earth during brief, untraceable bursts. This was how humanity survived: by being patient, by being invisible, by learning everything about their enemy before making a move. Across human space, the same scene played out hundreds of times. Ships hiding in nebulas, monitoring council activity, small outposts on dead moons tracking fleet movements, soldiers disguised as civilian traders, gathering intelligence from council stations. Earth had surrendered its military openly, but in secret that military had simply gone underground. The council believed they had won. That was their first mistake. On Nexus Prime, Dr. Sarah Reeves walked through the halls of the Xenological Institute, carrying a data pad and trying to look bored. She had been on the council's capital world for 2 years, and in that time she had built a reputation as a harmless scientist more interested in alien flowers than politics. That reputation let her go places others could not. She entered the archives section, nodding to the Thalaxian clerk who barely looked up from his work. The archives contained millions of documents, trade records, historical texts, scientific papers, and buried deep within them, classified military files. The council's security was good, but it had a weakness. They had been in power for so long that they had become careless. They believed their systems were unbreakable because no one had broken them in centuries. They did not account for human hackers who had grown up breaking sophisticated computer systems for fun. Reeves sat at a terminal and began accessing files that should have been impossible to reach. Her datapad was running custom software written by something Earth called the Ghost Network, a group of the best hackers humanity had ever produced. The software slipped through council security like water through fingers. What she found made her blood run cold. The files showed detailed plans for the occupation of human space. New Hebrides colony would be taken first as an example, then Arcadia Station, then New Beijing settlement. One by one, council forces would occupy human worlds, claiming they were protecting them. Within 5 years, Earth itself would be under council military control. There was more. The files discussed rehabilitation programs for humans, mandatory education to make them less aggressive, restrictions on breeding to slow population growth, assignment of humans to approved jobs only. They planned to break humanity's spirit completely. Reeves copied everything, her hands shaking. She had to get this information home. Earth needed to know just how bad the council's plans really were. She left the archives, still playing her role as the absent-minded scientist. But as she walked back to her quarters, she noticed something wrong. 2 Zentari security officers were watching her. She had been careful, but maybe not careful enough. That night, she packed only essential items and prepared to run. Meanwhile, on New Hebrides colony, council ships arrived. Commander Lisa Torres watched from the observation deck of the main settlement as 3 large warships settled into orbit. Within hours, shuttles began landing, carrying armed soldiers. The colony governor, an old man named Chen who was no relation to the admiral, met the council commander at the landing pad. Torres stood nearby with other militia members, their weapons confiscated weeks ago during the voluntary disarmament. "I am General Thane Vok," announced the Zentarii officer. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with armor that made him look like a machine. "This colony is now under council protection. You will cooperate fully with our peacekeeping forces." "We are a peaceful settlement," Governor Chen said calmly. "We do not need protection." Vok looked at him like an adult looking at a stupid child. "That is not for you to decide. We have reports of illegal weapons caches and seditious activity. All colonists will submit to security screenings. Anyone who resists will be detained." The occupation began immediately. Council soldiers moved through the settlement, searching homes, questioning people, installing surveillance equipment. They took over the communications array, blocking all messages to other human colonies. They seized the food storage facilities and the power plant. Torres watched it all with growing anger. She had served in Earth's military before retiring here to start a farm. She knew what occupation looked like. The Council was not protecting New Hebrides. They were conquering it. That night she met secretly with other former soldiers who had settled on the colony. They gathered in an abandoned mining tunnel outside the settlement. "We need to resist," said a man named Kumar. "We cannot just let them take everything." "With what?" asked another. "They took our weapons. We have farming tools and mining equipment." Torres thought for a moment. "Then we use what we have. Mining explosives, construction equipment, our knowledge of this colony's geography. We cannot beat them in open combat, but we can make them regret coming here. They will kill people if we fight back," Kumar warned. "They will kill people anyway," Torres said quietly. "I saw the reports before communications went down. This is just the first colony. They plan to take them all. We can either resist now while we still have some freedom, or wait until they have broken us completely." The others looked at each other. Finally they nodded. The New Hebrides resistance was born that night in a dark tunnel, by people who just wanted to live in peace but were being given no choice. Back on Earth, Admiral Chen received Reeves's intelligence data. She read through the Council's plans with President Martinez and the military command staff. The room was silent when she finished. "They planned this from the beginning," Martinez said. "The incident with the pirates was just an excuse. They would have found another reason if that had not happened. They cannot allow a rival to grow," Chen agreed. "We are young, adaptable, expanding fast. In another 100 years we might be their equals. They want to stop that before it happens, so what do we do?" asked General Thompson. Chen pulled up a tactical display. "We moved to Phase 1 ahead of schedule. We have 80% of our fleet hidden and ready. Our intelligence network is in place. Council forces are spread thin trying to occupy multiple colonies. We hit them hard, hit them fast, and show them that we are not as helpless as they think." "What about the colonies already under occupation?" Martinez asked. "If we attack, they might hurt civilians." "They are already hurting civilians," Chen said, showing reports from New Hebrides of arrests and rationing. "If we do nothing, it only gets worse. We need to show the colonists that Earth has not abandoned them." She highlighted several targets on the display. "These are Council logistics hubs. Supply depots, fuel stations, communications relays. Nothing with large civilian populations, but critical to their military operations. We destroy these and suddenly their occupation forces are isolated and unsupplied." "When?" Martinez asked. "1 week. That gives us time to position our ships and coordinate with resistance cells on the occupied worlds. We send a message simultaneously to all human colonies. Earth remembers. Earth fights. Do not give up." The orders went out through secret channels. Hidden ships began moving silently through the darkness, converging on their targets. Resistance fighters on occupied worlds prepared their improvised weapons and waited for the signal. The Ghost Network positioned their best hackers to strike at Council computer systems. Dr. Reeves, meanwhile, was running. The Zentari security officers had come to arrest her, but she had already fled her quarters. With help from Counselor Shrix, the sympathetic Korvax who secretly opposed the hardline against humanity, she made her way to a smuggler's ship hidden in the lower docks of Nexus Prime. The ship was old and smelled bad, but it could fly. As they broke orbit, Reeves looked back at the massive Council station and thought about all the species there who believed they were superior to humanity. Soon they would learn otherwise. The smuggler, a cyborg named Krell, glanced at her. "You know they will hunt you across the galaxy for this, right?" "Let them," Reeves said, clutching her datapad with its precious intelligence. "They are about to have much bigger problems to worry about." The countdown had begun. In 7 days, the Galactic Council would learn that humanity could bite back. And when they did, they would bite hard enough to draw blood. The Galactic Council went too reckless. Now humanity strikes back. The chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from 47 different species. Admiral Catherine Chen stood in the center, feeling small despite her military decorations and proud uniform. Above her, the council members sat in their elevated seats, looking down at her like judges at a trial. She had been to this place many times before, But today felt different. Today felt dangerous. Ambassador Marcus Okafor stood beside her, his face calm but his hands clenched tight. He had served Earth for 20 years in this place, always believing that diplomacy could solve any problem. Chen could see doubt creeping into his eyes now. "The Council has reached a decision," announced Archon Velthara, his voice echoing through the vast room. The Zentari leader was tall and thin, with silver skin that reflected the lights like polished metal. His species had been part of the Council for 3,000 years, and he never let anyone forget it. Humanity has proven itself too dangerous to maintain full military independence. Chen felt her jaw tighten but said nothing. She had been a soldier for 30 years. She knew when to fight and when to listen. Velthara continued, his voice dripping with false concern. "Your species is young, impulsive. Only 50 years ago you barely understood faster-than-light travel. Now you spread across 23 star systems, building weapons and making demands. The recent incident with the Kravox pirates shows your true nature. You escalated a simple border dispute into a massacre. They attacked our mining colony," Okafor said quietly. "They killed 200 civilians, including children. We responded with appropriate force." "Appropriate?" Velthara laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You destroyed their entire fleet. You pursued them to their home station and obliterated it. This is not how civilized species behave." Chen wanted to speak but held her tongue. The pirates had been raiding human colonies for months. The Council had done nothing despite repeated requests for help. When Earth finally dealt with the problem themselves, suddenly the Council cared very much. "Therefore," Velthara said, raising one long finger, "humanity will surrender 70% of its military vessels to Council custody. You will allow Council peacekeepers to oversee your remaining forces. You will submit all military decisions to Council approval before taking action. You have 30 days to comply." The chamber erupted in whispers and alien sounds. Some species seemed shocked. Others nodded in approval. Chen noticed a reptilian Korvax counselor named Shrix who looked troubled, but he said nothing. "This is outrageous," Okafor said, his voice rising. "You cannot simply strip a sovereign species of its defenses. The Council Charter guarantees each member the right to self-defense. The Charter also gives us the right to maintain galactic peace," Velthara replied smoothly. "We have determined that human military strength poses a threat to that peace. The decision is final. If you refuse, we will take corrective action." Chen finally spoke, her voice hard as iron. "What kind of corrective action?" Velthara smiled, showing too many teeth. "The kind that ensures compliance. Your colonies are spread across many systems, Admiral. They are difficult to defend, especially with a reduced fleet. I hope you make the wise choice." The meeting ended. Chen and Okafor walked through the gleaming corridors of the Council station in silence. When they finally reached their private shuttle, Okafor slammed his fist against the wall. 20 years, he said. 20 years I have served here, believing in this institution. And now they threaten us like common criminals." Chen started the shuttle's engines, her mind already working through calculations. "They fear us," she said simply. "What?" "Think about it, Marcus. 50 years ago, we had nothing. Now we have colonies, trade routes, and a fleet that makes them nervous. We adapt faster than they do. We think differently. That scares them." Okafor sat down heavily. "What do? We go home. We tell Earth what happened. And then we prepare. Prepare for what? War. We cannot fight the entire Council. They have thousands of ships." Chen set the course for the jump point that would take them back to Earth. "Maybe we cannot fight them all, but we do not have to. We just need to make them regret pushing us too far." The journey home took 3 days. Chen spent most of that time in communication with Earth's military leadership, speaking in codes that the Council could not break. When they finally arrived, Earth was already moving. President Sarah Martinez met them in the war room beneath Geneva. The room was filled with generals, admirals, and intelligence officers. Holographic displays showed all 23 human colonies and the positions of Council fleets. "They are already moving," Martinez said without greeting. "Council ships have been spotted near our outer colonies. They are not even waiting for the 30 days to expire. They want to catch us unprepared," Chen said, studying the displays. "They think we will panic and surrender quickly." "Will we?" asked General Thompson, commander of the Mars Defense Grid. Chen looked around the room at the gathered leaders of humanity. She saw fear in some faces, anger in others, but mostly she saw determination. Humans had faced extinction before. Many times in their history, they always found a way to survive. No, Chen said firmly. We will not surrender. But we will not fight openly either, not yet. We need time. She walked to the main display and began pointing at different locations. We publicly agree to their terms. We begin decommissioning ships, closing bases, pulling back forces. We make them think we are complying. And actually? Martinez asked. Actually, we enact Protocol Exodus. Every ship we supposedly decommission gets hidden instead. Deep space, asteroid fields, nebulas, anywhere our sensors can hide them. We power them down completely. The Council thinks we are helpless, but we are just waiting. For what? Okafor asked. Chen turned to face them all. For them to make a mistake. And they will. They always do. Empires that have been powerful for too long forget that others can bite back. Over the next 2 weeks, the plan began. Human ships left their stations and seemed to disappear. Bases closed down. Soldiers returned home. Council inspectors arrived at major human installations and saw exactly what they expected to see. A defeated species surrendering its teeth. But in the darkness between stars, those ships waited. Crews stayed aboard in cold sleep, systems running on minimal power. They were invisible to Council sensors, scattered across hundreds of hiding spots. It was the largest game of hide-and-seek in history, and everything depended on the Council believing the lie. Dr. Sarah Reeves watched from the Council world of Nexus Prime. She was a xenobiologist, supposedly studying alien plant life. Actually, she worked for Earth intelligence gathering information. She had just learned something terrifying. She sent an encrypted message back to Earth. They plan more than disarmament, found classified documents. Council intends to seize all human mining rights, control trade, and eventually annex Earth itself. They plan to make us servants, not equals. This was never about peace. It was always about dominance. When Chen read the message, she felt cold rage fill her chest. She had suspected as much, but seeing it confirmed made it real. The Council was not trying to keep the peace. They were trying to destroy human independence entirely. She called Martinez. Madam President, we need to accelerate our timeline. What happened? They are not going to stop at disarmament. They want everything. Our worlds, our freedom, our future. We need to be ready to fight sooner than planned. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. How soon? Weeks, maybe. We need to finish hiding our assets and prepare strike teams. When this starts, we need to hit them hard and fast. It is really going to be war then. Chen looked out at the stars from her office window. Somewhere out there, millions of humans lived on colonies, trusting their leaders to protect them. She thought about her own daughter living on New Hebrides colony with her family. Yes, Chen said. It is going to be war. They gave us no choice. The 30-day deadline approached. Earth sent official confirmation that they were complying with Council demands. Ambassador Okafor, still on Earth, recorded a message that sounded defeated and resigned. The Council received it with satisfaction, but Admiral Catherine Chen was not defeated. She was preparing, and soon the Galactic Council would learn a hard lesson about pushing humanity too far. The humans were done kneeling. Now they would show the galaxy what they were really made of.